So I come from a time back when manual therapy was the next big thing and modalities were the not cool thing versus, fast forward to now 2024, 26 years after I graduated, now manual therapy is the thing that we should leave behind and use only active strategies. And I get the problems with both. So I think the biggest problem to come out of the modalities era of physical therapy is that we use things like ultrasound and e-stim as if they were hot packs and ice packs, purely passive. And I've often thought, well, if manual therapy, things like mobilization with movement in particular, things that are more functional that you can do actively, if all these things just modulate the pain temporarily, and that's the same thing essentially that something like a TENS unit does, why don't we use a TENS unit for someone who has trouble deadlifting, slap it on their back wherever they have pain, and then have deadlift to eliminate those neurotags or those learned associations that that particular movement or activity is painful. So on myself, I had trouble after prolonged sitting with some recurrent left low back pain. It didn't prevent me from running or rock climbing or even falling from rock climbing. But with prolonged sitting, prolonged bending, I had trouble kind of straightening up for maybe about 5 to 10 minutes or so. The only thing that really relieved it was something called an H-wave device, which is essentially like a super fancy high-end TENS unit. However, it's not really TENS. I'll talk about that some other time in a future video. But that was the first thing that actually gave me relief and enabled me to completely load and unload so I can move my spine in all directions, and it gave me hours of relief after only using it like once or twice. After using that regularly for maybe a week or so, I pretty much have no low back pain. And this is something that I've tried all my loading strategies, all my unloading strategies, just general strengthening. I even got stim and needled, and none of that actually worked. So I think there's something to be said for for a modality that a lot of us, modern physical therapists have abandoned. Another patient I had, a former PT and colleague of mine, he came in laterally shifted. He had severe pain with loading that side, even in an unloaded position. I can get him in non-weight bearing and like a lumbar roadkill or modified hips offsets. But as soon as I applied any overpressure, even in non-weight bearing, all that leg pain came back. One of the only things that really modulated it was, again, using the H-wave device on him, turning it up to a relatively high setting on the high setting, so the highest intensity on the high setting, which is more of like a modulatory TENS-like setting, as opposed to the low setting that causes the muscles to contract. So I had him lie in non-weight bearing in a hips offset. Then I started doing this after he got used to it. After about 10 minutes or so, then I started doing overpressures. He was not able to tolerate that at all before I had that on. But then with it on, he was able to actually tolerate side glides and standing. And this was the first thing that got him loading and centralized. So again, I think one of the worst things that ever came out of the modalities era is that we used a lot of these things totally passive, and that passive didn't have any kind of carryover. But once you eliminate those neurotags with something that is a seemingly passive, like an electric stimulation unit, I think you can actually get someone moving better faster, especially if you leave it on as they're doing the activity that their brain thinks is threatening. Let me know what you think.